Now let's go to the UK, where a 13-year-old girl was called despicable by her teacher at a Church of England school because she didn't believe people could identify as whatever they wanted. They couldn't identify as cats, for example. That was one of the arguments they were having. Have a listen to some of that interaction.
But cisgender is not necessarily the way to be. You're talking about the fact that cisgender is the norm, that you identify with the gender of the sexual organs that you're born with, or you're weird. That's basically what you're saying, which is really despicable.
How? When it's
If I called my mum right now, my mum would be on my side.
If I called my mum, she'd say.
Well, that's very sad as well then.
How is it?
Loads of people agree with that. There's only a small majority of people who actually think that.
And why do you think we have so many problems in the world with homophobia?
Yeah, but
Because
that's
of
not
people
homophobia,
expressing-
that's
That's
gender.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
it
fine with
is.
lesbians and gay people.
Same.
I've got nothing against them.
Yeah, same.
I mean, just how vacuous that argument from the teacher is. And she brings up homophobia, and the students very rightly correct her and say, we have no problem with gay and lesbian people, and you can be gay and lesbian and not be trans in any way. I mean, this suggestion that if you are gay, then you don't identify as the gender you were born in is so utterly false, but that's what the teacher was putting forward. And the teacher even said the student should find a new school and then sent her to be punished for essentially believing in biology. Have a listen.
How you identity,
I
how
just
you
don't agree with it.
identify.
Yeah,
But it's not an opinion
Yes,
that we
it is.
express in this
Yes,
school.
it is.
No, it's not. And if you don't like it, you need to go to a different school. So
I did go to a
I'm
different
reporting you to Miss Willis. You need to have a proper educational conversation about equality, diversity, and
I ain't doing
inclusion.
it.
So the teacher told the students they were being reported to school administrators and would no longer be welcome at the school if they continue to express the view that only boys and girls exist. And that's just incredible stuff. And this mess is making news around the world, Daisy, but sadly it's not isolated. Let's have a quick look at how one GB News presenter covered this story.
Meow. I learned something new today, everybody. It's perfectly acceptable to identify as a cat. You what? Don't you dare mock it, by the way, because I've decided that is now what I am, Meow Shell, to you.
Well, she's having fun with it, but I've got to say, if my 13-year-old was called despicable, told to go to a new school, was called homophobic falsely, and all sorts of other nonsense that those poor kids were copying, I'd be ropeable.
And that was one of my first thoughts, Rita, was that teacher, in my opinion, was being completely abusive to those children. In what universe is it appropriate for a teacher for any reason to scream at students, particularly in front of the rest of the classes, it seemed to be, and call them despicable or homophobic and say they were so terrible they needed to go to a new school and get a proper equity, diversity and inclusion education? That is just bullying by the teacher. And as you pointed out, that the students are actually more woke than the teacher, because the teacher was confusing gender ideology with being lesbian or gay and tried to accuse them of being homophobic, but they caught it. They said, hang on a minute, no, we're not talking about that. And then later in the clip, the teacher tries to backtrack and says, but you can't see a connection between the two. So the teacher obviously has no idea what she's talking about. The kids obviously do, and good on them for pushing back and sticking up for themselves.
And the kid, when the teacher really comes at them hard, one of them says, my mum agrees with me and she'll say that. So you can see having that backbone, having that conviction, having the courage to speak. And the kids also say, most of the students think this way, but they're too scared to say anything because of what you're just doing to me now. So it comes from the home. When they know their parents are going to back them, when they know their parents are across the issue, then they have the courage to do what we just heard. But otherwise, they're just going to sit silently, swallow this nonsense, and be too meek to challenge lies that are being fed to them in the classroom.